Okay, Ben. Are you sort of ready? Okay.
This studies project is organized by Urban Research Theatre and by myself on the topic of masculinity and embodied practice. Two terms, masculinity, embodied practice, and the attempt was really to bring them together and to see what people would respond to a call to discuss those ideas specifically in relation to one another. I asked the Movement Research Organization if it could be a studies project, and they said yes, which I was really glad of because I really appreciate the studies project mission of the studies project, which I think is also really related to what we were trying to do, which is to strengthen bridges between artistic practice, embodied practice, and intellectual discussion, which also includes scholarly discussion, connections to academia, and the institutions of academia, and then the institutions of dance and theater, and to make those connections too, which is also part of the title of Masculinity and Embodied Practice. So that's kind of the fundamental plan. What I did was I put out a call for proposals in a kind of an academic way of putting out a call for proposals with a quite scholarly set of questions about embodied practice, dance, theater, but also martial arts, yoga, and how do these things relate to contemporary theory of masculinity, which then includes gender theory and queer studies theory and that kind of thinking. I put out that question, I put it out to some academic email lists and some academic circles, and also then through movement research to the movement research community, and also then to specific people that I did invite specifically. There were some people really in academia, graduate students, teachers working on theater studies specifically, who were really giving analyses of plays and performances in plays. There were artists speaking from their own practice, including not just dance and theater, but also clown, and also a practitioner of a certain mode of drama therapy, which I thought was really, really useful perspective to add in, because it's an embodied practice that's not performance-oriented. Then we had a series of performances that I suppose in a sense, I can't even say they were all dance performances. There was a dance performance, something more like theater, although also based on dance, but with text, and then it's kind of a performance, art performance, and then at the end of the day was our performance, which also, Urban Research Theater's performance of Play War, which also is on the border between theater and dance and other kinds of performance. So all in all, the day had really a lot of perspectives. That was what I think was most successful, was the diversity of the different perspectives that came together around those questions. It was my experience in going to Europe, living in Poland for 2 years, that the places where there was the most powerful support for embodied practice, long-term embodied practice, let's say especially in theater, that those places did not have the most sophisticated conversation about gender and sexuality, and some things that have been really at the forefront of conversation in the arts in the United States and in New York City. And so for me, the symposium was one of the most important things, was to try to have that conversation. And that's something that I think really happened, especially in the conversation at the end, that there was really something visible about a tension, I think a productive tension, between a conversation about politics grounded in identity politics of sexuality and gender especially, and a conversation about embodied practice, meaning training, technique, years of work in a studio context, or years of repetition of a specific score. That conversation is the one that for me now is most pressing. This is a name that I began to use in 2004 when I was in Poland. And what it means really on a basic level is that theater, for me, is fundamentally connected to embodied research. That is the development of the ways that we make theater, and I want to let's say, the techniques that we use to make theater. How do these techniques get invented? Acting techniques, movement techniques, speech techniques. It's a research process to invent these techniques, and that's something which I think is more, at least in this, let's say, my knowledge of the United States dance theater culture is much more aware. There's much more awareness of that in the dance community, of lineages of technique and research and lineages of teaching, and how those things are different. And it's also, there is this presence in the theater world, but a little bit less so. The theater world, I think, is a little bit less aware of embodied research because it also has this huge focus on language, text, drama, playwriting, and also image, and certain other things that are less about embodied practice. So to say a research theater means a theater, somehow we feel connected to the theater world, I guess more than the dance world in a direct sense, but we want to really make the connection. I want to make the connection.
Okay.
But the connection to research is essential for me, and that's another real affiliation with movement research. It's one of the few organizations in New York City that connect a performing arts base with the word research and this question of what is research, embodied research in the performing arts. A research theater then is one that's oriented towards this kind of embodied research, and urban is simply to say that the big question for me, is how can that kind of research be supported in an urban environment, specifically in New York City, but not necessarily only in New York City, but different from maybe going to a really rural situation where you're kind of isolated and you have your space and you work intensely in that space and then you tour. For me, I want this question of embodied research to really be right up against the environment of these people who are walking by and these streets. And I used to do also in the beginning a lot of work outdoors, working on embodied practice, usually movement-based, sometimes also song-based, outside, and I've done it also in New York. I'm not doing that right now. Our focus is more indoors, but still really feels really related to the fact of the urban environment.